And welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. Today in the studio we're going to talk about Anglo-Polish relations, what they are now, what it means for the future. And I'm delighted to be joined by Alexander Shaw, who has worked in the European Parliament with a number of MEPs, most recently with Nigel Farage. Alexander, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And I think when we talk about Anglo-Polish relations, for most people the starting point is, I think, the Second World War.
Yes.
When, of course, we entered the Second World War having declared war on Germany, Germany having failed to withdraw its troops from Poland, as the demand said. I mean, how do you think and that has also caused some controversy, because there is some suggestion amongst some Poles that, of course, we declared war and then sort of sat around doing nothing for 9 months. I mean, do you think that's really fair?
Well, I know that we're called godless traitors occasionally in Warsaw for failing to put boots on the ground immediately. I don't see what we could have done. But I suppose, the Second World War is one of these situations in Brussels. They now call it the European Civil War, don't they? And it seems to me that you're guilty by having not been invaded. So we came out of it very well in Britain compared to Poland, I suppose. And it's inevitable that there'll be a certain amount of resentment on the continent for people who didn't do so well.
Yes, either you're criticised because you won, or you're criticised because you didn't lose.
Exactly.
Yes, and of course and I can understand there's a certain frustration on the part of Poland's side that, but if you actually go into the history and you look at what was supposed to happen, of course the French were supposed to invade Germany from the west, and indeed we now have, with the benefit of hindsight, it's quite clear that given the strength of the French army at that time, they would have been very successful. But of course they seemed, and I think much earlier than the Second War, to have sort of lost the will to fight.
Well, I'm not sure. But can we say that the French would have been successful against the Germans?
Well, I think the Germans certainly thought they would have been. I mean, if you go back to the Rhineland, for example, the German army told Hitler, no, we can't invade the Rhineland because the French army will destroy us. And Hitler's view was, well, yes, except they won't fight. And of course he carried this bluff forward each time. The Rhineland, then we had Munich, Austria, and each time the French sort of had despite having this huge military force, we just sort of lost the will.
Well, maybe like the Americans, they were worried about which side they should be on. I mean, my grandfather was fighting the French in the Middle East, I think. It seems to me that they were very divided in their loyalties as well. Although not being French, I suppose I probably shouldn't comment on that.
That was the Second World War. I think we've actually moved on rather more positively since then, and we've seen, particularly since Poland joined the European Union, huge numbers of Polish folk migrate to the UK.
Yeah.
And I think the relations now seem actually quite good, or have been very good for a long time. If the sheer numbers of the job will suggest that people find that being in the UK, Polish is fine.
Yeah. Nobody has ever resented the Polish immigration, as far as I'm aware. I mean, of course, on the fringes of the Eurosceptic movement in Britain, you always get racists and that sort of thing. You never hear a bad word about the Poles, do you?
No.
They come over, they work hard. And they seem to be doing very well for themselves now. I mean, those who haven't gone back, they seem to be in positions of bourgeois prosperity. But I can also see why a lot of them do go back now, because it's quite wonderful here in Warsaw. The city is looking clean and efficient. It feels more like Vienna now. Maybe 10 years ago things weren't so great, but I hope that the Poles have benefited from being in the Union with us, and I'm sure that after we withdraw, well, we have more Poles in London than there are Brits in Warsaw.
Well, by quite a long way.
Yeah, and I think it would benefit everyone if we just kept ourselves quite close and made it as easy as possible for everyone to cooperate across the borders.
Now, you obviously have given your work, have a much greater insight into Brexit and its ramifications than the rest of us have. And we hear, although it's hard to decide how credible this is, the concept of at some point there being a Pol exit. I mean, do you think that's realistic? Poland leaving the European Union?
Well, I've also lived in Hungary. I have to say the propensity for many of the rather proud and upstanding Central European peoples to put their country first above a supranational bloc, especially, I suppose, those of you who have lived behind the Iron Curtain, probably knows no bounds. I mean, I like to think so. I mean, I think, I'm not sure about economic pragmatism, but I mean, I think a lot of the Brexit vote came with the mentality that it's better to be the master in a hovel than the servant in a palace. Now, I'm not saying that Britain will be turned into a hovel. I don't think anyone believes that. But the will to unshackle your people from this bloc, maybe the Poles will push themselves out. I'm not sure. Although I have to say that until 10 years ago, at least, I rather got the impression that in places like the Visegrad nations, people were proud of membership because it made them feel that their country was too prosperous and part of something bigger.
Exactly. Well, Alexander, that's been great. We'll end this section just there, but thank you for that insight.
Okay.
And join us again on Poland Daily History for further insights on Anglo-Polish relations.